VEDA day 21. So last night was a bit of a fun time. Short but a fun time. I met up with three guys who all went to the same chapter of Kappa Delta Rho fraternity at Carnival University, where I was an undergraduate. Couple were a few years older than me, and one was a few years behind me. But I think I think there was a bit of overlap in all cases, or at least back when I lived closer to Carnegie Mellon, and I would occasionally visit. I think I saw the other one a few times. We got together yesterday because this would have been Carnival, or this was Carnival weekend in Carnegie Mellon, the big annual event where they actually give you a day off from school on a Friday, and then the entire weekend has all of these great events, booth and buggy and all sorts of other cool things. So we had a couple of beers, and I really do mean a couple, as in two. We had two beers, and that lasted about 2 hours, and maybe that shows you just what old men we have all become. You know, when I was in college, I probably would have been the first one to call it a night because I was, so focused on my school, and folks would have been trying to convince me to stay out and have a few more beers. Now, I probably would have stayed. I don't know if I would have had another beer, but I would have stayed longer and chatted because I'm the only one of the four of us that were there last night that don't have kids, right? So, but although I get it because I want to have them, and so therefore I totally get the need to get home and be there, so that you can be up in the morning at the appropriate time when they start being energetic. So I got that. It was interesting that one of the themes that came up was essentially how we were all assholes when we were 20 to some extent or another. There's this sort of recollection that one's college age behavior, by and large, inappropriate or maladjusted. But then again, I guess that's what you kind of go to college to learn or to do. I mean, maybe a lot of people picked all of that up in high school, and by the time they were 18, they were morally and ethically and socially fully formed. But that's probably a minority of us. I think a lot of us, the college years were years in which we essentially were grappling with and trying to figure out how to be an adult human being. Part of that, I think, is asserting yourself against the world as an independent person. But then the other thing is how to figure out when there's no one around to censor your activities except yourself, is trying to figure out what is the proper level of assertion, and also really dealing with the fact that when you go to a school, like CMU, or in another state for most people, that you're coming into contact with cultures and with people that are for the most part outside of your experience. Now, I grew up in the northern DC suburbs before it sort of metastasized to the greater Mordor on the Potomac that it is now. Before when there's still trees and whatnot around where we lived. But at any rate, I'd had some exposure to a lot of different folks because the government's a pretty their gang is open up to everybody, so you do get to meet a lot of different people. But not everybody at CMU had that opportunity, so it was somewhat of a culture shock to some people. You had to deal with folks of different races, folks of different nationalities, folks of different sexual orientations, and all of this for the first time. And not everyone dealt with it well. And so there was a little bit of that. And then there was a little bit of a recounting of the general foolishness that a group of 19, 20, 21-year-olds can get themselves into when they're let off the leash of adult supervision for the first time, and the history of the uneasy relationship that a university has with the fraternities that are on it, at least the the sort of nationally chartered ones. On the one hand, the fraternity has to be nationally chartered in order to have a house. On the other hand, in order to be nationally chartered, the college, the university has to accede to that, has to sort of give their permission, and so they always sort of hold the sword of Damocles above any fraternity at any time. At the same time, the fraternities themselves are in that precarious position, and so I recall my years fondly, maybe because we were a bunch of geeks, I have to admit it, which probably doesn't surprise anyone. You go to a school like Carnegie Mellon, but even so, even at a place like Carnegie Mellon, there were degrees of geekery, and the far less geeky people went to fraternities that emphasized partying and drinking over some other aspects. We always had the highest GPA on campus and participated in a lot of other things, in addition to throwing some awesome parties. And that was mainly the thing that I thought was a good thing about it, right? In other words, being in a fraternity, at least the one that we were at, provided a safe environment for you to try out this whole drinking and socializing thing. I say safe because, at our parties we always had people that were designated as sober patrol that were looking around for folks that were not having a good time, and if they were members of the house, escorting them up to their bedrooms and putting them to bed, and if they were outside the house and making trouble, kicking them out, and if they were outside the house and having problems, and finding them help. And I view that as a good thing. So it sort of provided a built-in safe social space that didn't involve, making fake IDs and sneaking into places and then trying to find your way back to campus. So I have a generally positive view of those years, and certainly a very positive view of my fraternity experience generally, even though I was so far in the closet that at that time that people ask me about that today. Bobby's like, how did you shower with in a public shower space, and I'm like, because I didn't think about it back then. They were just guys, they were my brothers. That's really how we thought about that. So if you're asking how a gay man exists in a social fraternity, that's how he did it in the closet. Although I'd like to think that today it'd probably be easier. But yeah, that's really all I had to say. It was good reminiscing, reflecting, and meeting a couple of people that I hadn't gotten a chance to talk to probably in a decade or more. Didn't even know they were in Austin. So thanks, Eric Morton, for setting this up, getting us all together. Maybe next time we'll be able to do it in a little bit less crowded space. Any rate, I guess that's it for me today. So have a great day and be good to one another. Bye now.